and a mystery of the Jubilee, which has to do with every 50 years, God does this thing, and prophetic events take place, ultimately leading to the end times. And the other thing is that these amazing, really, of God appointed words that God puts in the scrolls to be read on certain days, and everything from the Six-Day War to the birth of Donald Trump, all these words that when they're read, what is said in the words matches up, comes true with what's happening in the world, showing God is awesome. We watched these things happen from this mystery year in the 19th century, when this mystical, these things happen in the land of Israel, saying God is ready to start doing this. This is the end times. Then it goes to the next Jubilee when the land is given to Israel. Then it goes to the rebirth of Israel. Then it goes to the Jubilee of everything in the exact time, exact year, and exact days, the return to Israel, which has to happen before Jesus comes. And then we got up to right now, when you did the countdown, it comes out to this year, the 2017, just before. And it's the year of, this is another Jubilee year when the trump has to sound. So it's the year of the trump, which we saw, and it's the year of Trump, and where the declaration of Jerusalem comes. And that's, so we're right here, we're right where we are right now. Every Jubilee sets the stage for what's coming. And one of the things about this is there's a link between, I won't go into it, but a link between what Trump did. This is Jerusalem solidified as the capital of Israel, but to what's coming, which is the temple. The temple has to come. And there are things in what Trump did, we can't go into it now, but that are linked to the temple. The temple has to be rebuilt. We know that before the end can come, or before the end of the age. So this, what happened, is linked to that. But let me, before we kind of move forward, if I can, let me just give you a little, kind of like a really cool kind of summation. Remember I told you at the very beginning that in every Jubilean year, a child is born.
Yes.
Well, actually, the first one we did, which is 1867, this beginning of end times. There actually, I can't go into it, but I can say this: there was. I hate to keep saying that, but there's so much. But there was actually a child born 50 years before that, who plays a central part in that Jubilee. But that's a whole nother thing. But then, 1867, a child is born. And that is John Patterson, who will then play the central part in the Jubilee of 1917, leading the soldiers of Israel into the land for the first time in 2,000 years, and founding all these things of Israel that are going to come. But then in that year, 1917, another child is born, who is the Rabbi Goren, who will blow the shofar at the next Jubilee when he turns 50. So everybody does it when they turn 50. But let me just tell you a cool thing. Remember I told you about the man who was linked to so many of this, which is that man, John Patterson.
Yes.
1970, he leads the Jewish soldiers into the land. He becomes the godfather of the Israeli army. He's trains the leaders of Israel. He dies in the year that Israel is voted back, 1947. And he was born in the first Jubilee and all that. But let me just tell you one other thing that I didn't tell you. It's just a cool thing. A year before he dies, he befriends an Israeli family. Actually, he befriended them probably before, but he's friends with them. It's a new family. They're young, and they're about to have a baby, their first son. They have their firstborn son. They name the son after him, John Patterson. And John Patterson is there. He blesses the son. It's at the circumcision, at the bris.
Yes.
He gives a gift. He gives a word to the son, blesses him. And this is a Christian, by the way, who began the Israeli army. Okay, so he blesses the son. Then he dies. The son grows up and becomes a hero to Israel. And he actually dies trying to rescue Israeli hostages. His name was Yoni, named after John Patterson. Because he dies, his next brother, his younger brother, goes into politics and the family is Netanyahu.
Of course.
Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yes.
Yeah. So before he dies, Patterson blesses this family, who's going to become the prime minister in the year of Jubilee, and who's going to also be part of this whole mystery. So just a cool thing. And actually, this is just a footnote. Is that the body of John Patterson was brought back to Israel under Netanyahu. And he saluted him and honored him. But this is all from the Jubilees.
Nice.
Just wanted to throw that in.
Well,
so
thank you.
No.
Okay.
So now, this mystery of the oracle really really encompasses the mystery of the end times. What is the mystery? The Jubilee is, as we've said from the beginning, but it gets fulfilled in a different way each time, is you shall return. Remember that Hebrew word tashuvu? And remember what we saw, that in the very ordinance of Moses for the Jubilee, you shall return. Mm-hmm. In that word, you shall return, it actually had the date of Israel's birth, 1948, in it. Well, the whole mystery is of return. And it's returning from what was lost or departed from at the beginning. What happened at the beginning of the age? The Jewish people leave the land. They have to leave the land. So what is this all about? The Jewish people, God's bringing them, returning to what they left at the beginning. The beginning of the age, we mentioned it a few times, 70 AD, what Messiah, Jesus prophesied. They left Jerusalem. So they have to return to Jerusalem from what they left. The Jubilee, you return to what you left. But also, it wasn't only that. I mean, the apostles also left Jerusalem. Everything left Jerusalem. Why? The age begins, not just with that, it begins with the first leaving of Jerusalem. What is that? It was Jesus who began the age when he left Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives. This whole mystery comes from his feet. It all begins with him leaving Jerusalem. And then the church leaves Jerusalem. And then the Jewish people leave Jerusalem. And then everything leaves. But then now is the time we're watching. The mystery of the end times is the return. The whole age is following the feet of Jesus. Even the Jewish people, and there are Jewish people, many who believe now, but the Jewish people who don't believe, the nation was still following their Messiah. He left, they left. So now we're watching this mystery of return. The end times are all about return. Yeah. So the Jewish people have to return to where they were at the beginning of the age. So that's what happened in 1948. That's what happened in all these Jubilees. That's what happened in 1967. They have to return to, and they have to return to the original state. And the original state was the world recognized Jerusalem as the capital. So now we had that with Donald Trump in the last Jubilee. All that. But there's more to the mystery, because it's going to get even bigger, because it's another dimension of it. Because it's not just the Jewish people. Whatever happens to the Jewish people happens to the world.
Yes.
Whatever happens with Israel affects the whole world. What did Paul say? If they come back to God, it's going to be life from the dead. The whole world is going to be blessed. Whatever happens to the Jewish people is linked. The Jewish people are linked to the entire world. Their history is linked. So they're like the microcosm of the macrocosm. And so therefore, what happens to the Jubilee with the Jewish people, it means it's also going to happen to the world. So what does that mean? Now, this is in a chapter called the Dark Jubilee.
Yes.
And this is very important. It's a whole different thing, but it's part of the same mystery. Part of the same mystery. Here's the thing. If the mystery says you will return to the original state where you were in the beginning. So if the Jewish people were in Israel, they're back. But where was the world? 2,000 years ago, beginning of the age, the world was not like we know it now. It wasn't a Christian culture or Western Christian. It was Rome. It was non-Christian. It was unchristian. It was anti-Christian. It was pagan. So the mystery says that the world is going to return to its original state. So that is why we are watching this every day in the media. Every day you turn on the television. The world is in its own Jubilee, own return. It's a dark one, and that is that if Israel returns, so the world is returning. So therefore, that's why the world is casting off, the mainstream culture, casting off its Christian foundation every day. That's why at the beginning of the age, you had a morality that would kill children and babies, that babies and unborn. Well, that's why it's returned. It's returning to where it was. You had a world that was against the gospel. That's what you're watching now. This is not the same America or world that we were born into, many of us.
That's right.
It is a world that did not have the morality that we have as far as with sexual morality, as far as marriage. And so we are watching that again. You used the word before, you said pagan. That is absolutely true. We are watching it, but it's all part of this mystery. And that means the world at the beginning, there was persecution against the people of God. Well, we're watching this come. It's all part of the return. And that is that that, we're watching every year in America since Obama, or the time of Obama, 1% of the people turn away from calling themselves Christians. I mean, every year. That's a massive change. It's happening continuously, and it's happening all over the world. There is revival happening in many of the poor countries. They're having revival, but this is what's happening. So this is all, when you see this on the news, when you see the next thing they are doing, that you can't believe it. What are they doing to the children? What are they doing with the schools? What are they doing to the babies? What are they doing to Christians? What are they doing with... It's all part of the mystery. It has to be. It's not that there can be revival. We got to pray for that. But it's, this thing is, everything returns. So because at the end, you're going to have a showdown between, you have Israel returning, and then you have the world. Yeah. And so in the beginning, you had a showdown between the world. You had Rome and Israel. Well, that's going to come again. There's going to be a rematch. Except this time it's going to involve something else. So at the beginning of the age, you also had a world culture, Rome, that was against Israel, that wanted to destroy Israel. Sorry. You're watching all this happen at once. So if you want to understand everything that we're watching every single day of prophecy, it is this. It is the return. It is the other side of it. So listen, there's still hope. There still can be revival. There's still can be all that. But we know this. So this is all part of it. And so at the same time, but there's a good side to this. And this is another mystery, or another return, or the mystery taken to another level. Mm-hmm. It's not just, again, the Jewish people, because what happens to the Jewish people happens to the world, but it also happens to the church. Because see, the Jewish people left Israel, so did the gospel. Okay? It all goes together. The Jewish people went all over the world, the gospel went all over the world. Yeah. It all goes together. So even though the Jewish people, most of them, although some of them did, they started it with, but most of them have been separated from the gospel, but they're still joined to the gospel because they still travel, and they're going to be joined again. But so here's the thing. At the beginning of the age, you had a church. The church was the book of Acts. And the book of Acts was not the way we've known church, from the way people think of church. It was radical. It was revolutionary. It was world-changing. It was on fire. It didn't have a lot of money, didn't have a lot of worldly power, but they had the power of the Holy Spirit. Yes. And they overcame the greatest empire of the world. They overcame it. They were more powerful. Book of Acts. What happened was, though, the church started departing from that. When you read church history and you get out of that first century, the church departs and starts losing this revolutionary, losing more and more. As time goes on, it becomes more part of the world, becomes established in Rome, and therefore lost that book of Acts thing. You see less signs of the Spirit, when you read church history. You see less signs of all that. It becomes established, it becomes cultural, it becomes comfortable, it becomes status quo. But here's the mystery. If the Jubilee means that everything must return to where it was at the beginning, it means the church must also return to where it was at the beginning. Oh. And that means the book of Acts.
Yes.
And that all goes together.
Yes. Amen.
That means that the church has to go from being a cultural phenomenon to being a beyond culture, a status quo thing, to become prophetic again, from a establishment to a revolutionary thing. And what's going to happen is, they work together, because as the world returns, it starts separating from the faith. It starts persecuting. But that will cause those who stand true for God to become the way they were, like the book of Acts, like the apostles and the disciples and the prophets. They will become like that. It's that very thing, because when the book of Acts came, they didn't come when the Christianity was accepted or was celebrated. The book of Acts is when the faith was persecuted. And so even the persecution, even when the world, you were saying, Lori, as you're reading this and you're watching, you're saying, we have to separate from this world. Yes. Now we have to engage the world. We have to come, but we have to separate from the junk of this world. And so every time you see this, you say, hey, listen, beam me up. I'd like to, take me, Lord. But we're still here for a reason. Yes. But we have to separate more. See, it's happening at the same time. As the world separates from the faith, the culture part, the mainstream culture, the faith has to separate from the world, the worldliness of the world, and then be an agent to the world of the gospel, like the disciples were. Yes. So that is what God's calling. So that is great news. And so, and the thing is that, so if Israel comes home, the church has to come home.
Yes.
The church has to come home to what it was. It's all together. It all comes together.
Beautiful.
In the end.
Oh, I love it.
Because at the same time, that's a sign. Every time you see the world doing it, it's a sign for that you have to return to the book of Acts. We have to become that book of Acts apostle, disciple, because that's what they had.
Yes.
So it's a reminder to you. But there is one missing piece. You see, all these things are the return of what was departed from. But what was the ultimate departure? Wasn't all these things. It was Messiah. The Jubilee says, you shall return home to your ancestral possession. Now, the one who owns Israel and is not Israel, it's Messiah.
Yes.
I mean, it's Israel, but above that, who owns Israel? Jesus does.
Yes.
Who owns the Jewish people? Messiah, Jesus does. Who owns Jerusalem? So, but the mystery, now get this all, put it all together. The Jubilee is that the one who owns the possession leaves it, is separated from his possession.
Oh, man.
So here, this whole thing is revolving around him, because the ultimate Jubilee is the king is separated from his kingdom. Is that the king of Israel is separated from Israel, separated from the Jewish people, separated from Jerusalem, and separated from the world. But the Jubilee says everyone shall return to his own possession. So the ultimate Jubilee is that Messiah himself is going to return to his possession.
Oh,
the king will return to the kingdom.
Yeah.
And he will come because he's the owner. He's the owner. It's the whole story. Everything else is second. It all begins with him. It ends with him. He's the Alpha and the Omega. So the Jubilee of Mystery begins with him, ends with him. But not only that, it's not only him from Israel. He's God also. Yeah. So he didn't just leave Jerusalem, he left the world. So the ultimate Jubilee is this world's been separated from God, but God comes home, everyone returns, God will return. His feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives. Yes. The Lord shall be king over all the earth, and the Lord shall return to his possession, which is this world. Then the kingdoms of the world shall become the kingdom of the Lord.
Yes.
So what happens at Jubilee? Everything gets transferred to the owner. Oh. That's what it's all about.
Oh, man.
So now, this is prophecy, this is everything. But as you said, also, this is very personal. Yes. For each of us, yes. Why this mystery? Why did God make this mystery so over everything, all these things? Mm-hmm. Because of what Jim just said, and that is that each of us, we go through this life and we never feel at home here. And the interesting thing is, the older you get, you should feel more at home, but it's the opposite. You feel less at home.
It's so true.
The more you live, the more, that doesn't make any sense. A fish feels at home, I imagine, you talk to the fish, in the ocean, but why would we not feel at home? And because this mystery has to do with all of us, because we're not at home. No. This is not our home. No. And the Jubilee is about returning home. The Jubilee is about that. Look at the end of the Bible. When you read the end of Revelation, what do you see? In the Jubilee, you get back what you lost. Read the end of Revelation, and what do you see? You see the tree of life. We lost that, but now it's back. This was from Eden. We lost that, and now it's back. We see all these things that were lost come back. Yes. And what's the Jubilee? How does it begin? In a sense, it begins because it's set up that somebody leaves their inheritance. What's the beginning of the Bible? We left our inheritance. Yes. It's the Jubilee. We left Eden. We left God. We left that. That's why God set up the Jubilee, because it's about all of us. And even if we weren't there, which we weren't back then, we all have a sense of it in our lives, that we've lost something, or there's something else, there's something more, there's something bigger. For my life, there's something more. For my calling, there's something more. We're fallen. And so we have this thing. So what is the message of salvation? It is, Jesus says, it's a message of the prodigal son. It's come home. Yes. Return. Yes. Jubilee. Come home. Your father's waiting. What is salvation? It's our Jubilee. We come home. Yes. We come home. We were wandering, and we come home. And so our whole life is about coming home. And it's not just once. Our whole life is becoming who we are, becoming who we were called to be, becoming what we lost, getting back what we lost. So here is the ultimate Jubilee. Messiah. You know when the Jubilee began? In the year of Israel, it began on Yom Kippur, when the atonement was offered up. Jesus is our atonement. We know that. So he is our Jubilee.
Yes, you are.
He's our Jubilee. So our whole salvation is this. And the thing is, the thing about this is that, God wants us to live in the power of Jubilee. Everything we've seen is God saying, listen, I'm real in this world. I am real. I'm the God who brings home. And I do it at the exact time, the exact way. I keep my promise. My word is true, and I will bring you home. And so why with Israel? Because God is the one who brings you home.
Yeah.
God is the God who is saying, I restored Israel. That's a sign that I have the power truly to restore you.
Yeah.
They were broken, they were scattered, they were bones. I'm the one who takes the bones of your life and makes it alive again. I'm the one, I took the broken buildings and I said they will rebuild the buildings. I will rebuild them because God's the one who takes the broken pieces in our life and rebuilds us. That's what it's all about. God is the God of our life. It's our Jubilee. It's our restoration.
Amen.
That's what it's about. That God has called us to live in the power. The book, ultimately, when it closes, it gets very personal about how to live in the power of restoration, how to live in the power. This is telling you.
Lord. Thank you, Father. Oh, Lord.
That listen, you knew nothing else. Your God is real.
Yes.
God is real.
That's
His
right,
word is
Rabbi.
true.
Yes.
His promises are good. The Bible is the word of God. And he is still on the throne, and he's got no intention of vacating that throne.
No.
He's on the throne of your life, and he will work all things together for you who love the Lord.
Amen.
This is our God. This is what it's all about.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the ultimate coming home isn't even the kingdom on earth. That's going to be awesome. That's going to be a jubilee for the world. The lion will lay down with a lamb, and and they will beat their swords into plowshares. But that's going to be awesome. That's going to be a jubilee for the world. But that's not even the final thing. The final thing is when you read the very end of the Bible, the final jubilee is our home is heaven is our ancestral possession.
Yeah.
Heaven is your inheritance.
Yeah.
Heaven is when you finally get to heaven.
Yeah,
that's when you're.
People are going crazy.
You
Your
can
name
clap for God.
for the Lord. Yes.
When you get to heaven, it's not just heaven. You're going to say, for the first time in your life, I'm home. I'm home. This is it.
Wow.
I'm home. I can relax. I can rest. I'm home. This is where I belong. Everyone shall return to their possession. And so what is it? Then that day, God says, I will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more pain and no more mourning and no more death and no more crying. And God will restore the years that the locusts have eaten. God will restore all those things. It says, then God himself will be among us, and he shall be our God, and we shall be his people, because the ultimate possession, our ultimate ancestral possession, is God himself.
Yes.
It's him, and his possession is us.
Oh.
We shall be his, and he shall be ours, and that is the Jubilee. Oh. That is the awesome thing, and then the mystery will be finished, and then the mystery will go on forever and ever and ever and ever.
Oh, my
Ever.
God, Rabbi.